The three of them stuck together the best they could. Sapphire guessed they looked like scared prey to the more experienced guests. They had found a few delegations, as they were so grandly called, from other frontier keeps. They were currently discussing with those from Kindle Keep, if Sapphire remembered correctly. Not that she had any clue where that was, aside from their new friend saying it was far out west. But what were they after? Dakota tried again. She was met with the same confused faces as the last people they asked. Nothing. As far as we know, they were spotted keeping an eye on the keep. We chased them away. A few days later, they would return, rinse, repeat. The gilded Huntress leading the expedition replied. Sapphire would put her in the mid to late 60s, so older than Dakota, but clearly still in prime shape. So they never actually attacked you? No, we struck first each time. Didn't put up a fight either. We did manage to down one of their numbers the second time around. Then after about a week of those chases, they finally stopped showing up. We think they were looking for something, but didn't find it, the guardsman on her flank answered. Well, with us they found it, Balathon interjected in a perturbed tone. Sapphire didn't know what to make of this. Not one of the keeps present reported actually having been attacked, yet at least two were gone, or at least nothing more than deserted husks now. The Royal Guard had managed to clear one of them, knowing there were Darklings present. The other keep in question, though, no one had come back from. A much stronger force had already been dispatched to deal with that, but it was still dire news. The same Archer who had led them in came over, clearing his throat. Food and refreshments will be served shortly. We shall have chicken for starters with a Tilix roast as the main course, and of course, the king's favourite, honey ice cream for dessert. You may take your seats over there. I do hope you enjoy the meal. He went, bowing before moving to another group and repeating the procedure. Balathon and Sapphire exchanged glances. Sapphire had always wondered what she ate in a place like this. She was expecting something special, though she had no idea what ice cream even was. She was so ready to find out, though. They moved to their seats at a table a bit off to the side, as they had expected. There were 18 people seated at the table, representing 4 keeps. Looking around, Sapphire couldn't make out any other frontier-looking people, so she guessed that was all who were present. Servants came out carrying large platters of food that looked like something from a story you heard as a kid. The smell was truly divine, even if she hardly knew what it was she was smelling. At the other table, Sapphire could hear both serious talk and jokes being exchanged. At their table, though, it was clearly mostly frontier people, and they ate in silence, savouring the food. Sapphire had never had anything like this. They had chicken back home, but this was spicy. It almost reminded her of when Tom had tried to use some of his chili that one time. This didn't hurt though as that had. It just tasted heavenly. She was equal parts saddened and relieved the portions were not that large. She would likely have run out of space with the other courses if they weren't. They were offered both red and white wine to drink. At Dakota's insistence, they were only allowed 1 glass for each course, making do with water for the rest. They didn't really need any more booze in their stomach right now. Turning down the king's wine was likely a considerable insult, though. It, of course, helped. It was all of excellent quality. The main course was much the same, being served with a rich, thick sauce and some wonderful-smelling vegetables Sapphire didn't even recognize on the side. She had feared they would stand out as uncivilized savages in the face of such a meal. The rest of the table, though, was clearly in a similar situation. Every now and again, she did catch someone turning to look at them from another table. Some of them shook their heads a bit, others seemingly found it amusing, but for once, Sapphire didn't care. Then the dessert was brought out. It looked like some kind of white clay, almost, shaped into balls. It had a yellowish white colour and hardly smelt of anything. Taking a good sniff, though, there was definitely honey in there, and it was served with steaming hot tea for some reason. The king's favourite, frost-powdered chilled honey ice cream with sweet lemon tea. Eat it slowly and remember the tea. It helps make the experience that much more exquisite, and wards off any negative effects, the server informed them, before politely bowing, stepping back. Magically frozen food? Sapphire questioned. She guessed that was what ice in ice cream referred to then. Negative effects, Dakota went, looking at her. They wouldn't serve dangerous food, would they? Balathon added in, trying to be included. Sapphire just shrugged and looked around at the others at the table. It's perfectly safe, just take it slow, an older male Dragonette assured them. That was good enough for Sapphire. Besides, if this was a favourite of the king, it had to be good. She did wonder where he was, since she had kind of expected him to be present. She hadn't seen any sign of him, though. She picked up the spoon to try and poke it. It was soft and velvety, just like some kind of very fine wet clay. She got a bit onto her spoon, looking at the others. They all got a small scoop before nodding. taking a bite simultaneously. Now that was an experience. It was sweet, it was creamy, yet it was so cold. Sapphire was glad she hadn't taken a larger bite. She remembered the service instructions, picking up the cup of tea, taking a sip. As the nice warm liquid flowed into her mouth, the cold instantly vanished, being replaced with a pleasant sweetness. She could see why they thought this was a winning combination. They slowly ate the ice cream, sipping the hot tea intermittently, refilling from the large teapots placed on the table. One of the others, a younger-looking Huntress, apparently got a bit too enthusiastic as she dropped her spoon, pressing her hands to her head, gasping. A very painful expression on her face. Sapphire instinctively put down her spoon, staring at the unfortunate soul. The ones beside her were quick with the tea, though, which seemed to alleviate the pain rather swiftly. "Brain freeze!" was shouted out from somewhere. Quite a few people, apparently finding this funny, had a laugh at the poor Dragonette, who shrank enough to almost hide under the table. Sapphire felt damn sorry for the poor girl, as she returned to her own ice cream, being very careful not to go too fast. Being looked at because you were an odd one out was bad enough, but embarrassing yourself in front of this many important people was not a fate she wished for. This stuff was very good, though. Eventually she found herself wishing there was more of the delicious ice cream, as she stared at the empty plate. It wasn't that she was hungry, very far from it, it had just tasted so good. They had been allowed time to sit and digest their meal for a bit as they waited for the slower ones, mostly from their table, following the scare of humiliation. "If everyone has finished their meal, we will move to the council chamber to begin the day's proceedings. Lord Haldex will be our speaker for the day," a very finely dressed female Dragonette announced in a clearly magically enhanced voice. Everyone got up and started moving about, the members of their table being escorted by more ushers to where they would be seated. It would appear the secondary effect of using sugar as a performance-enhancing drug had become apparent as Jackalope lay snoring in his lap, loudly. Jarrex was lying sprawled out on the ground, the Tyrox having been removed for the time being. They still needed to get that thing home in time to have it strung up, so they couldn't stay here too long. "You know, I was worried you broke her heart for a second there," Fengi added, sitting down next to them. "So was I, to be honest. I had no clue she even liked me. What are you even supposed to do in that situation?" "Then why did you agree to that stuff with Unkai?" Fengi asked, sounding puzzled. "He asked me to. Thought it might be fun, too, at some point. Why did you?" "Because she kept complaining about it," Fengi replied indignantly. "It took a while to even get her to admit she likes you. Mostly she just went on about how annoying you and Sapphire were when you were spending time together. Didn't take much to figure it out, though." "But, she hasn't even tried to spend time with me short of work, and if she had questions, it was usually just about making things go boom." "You don't do much except work, Tom. At least not while we are awake. I think it's time for a lesson. Redexy, close your ears. You too, Jarrex." Fengi looked at the two, until they at least feigned disinterest. "Tom, not everyone is comfortable with showing affection. Somebody suck at it." Fengi pointed at the still sleeping Jackalope, nodding. "She doesn't know what she's doing, and if you break her heart or play with her, we will break you, okay? So be nice." He had never heard her voice go hard. It was honestly a little scary. Of all the things Tom would expect to come out of Fengi's mouth, threats were about last on the list. "I'll be nice," he found himself replying almost involuntarily, pausing for a bit. Why would that stop her from spending time with me, though? Fengi just looked at him like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Because she was fucking terrified you liked Sapphire," she stated, going a bit slower than normal. "And who are you always with when not at the smithy?" Tom had to give her that one. Actually catching him without Sapphire around was not easy most days, short of nanny duties of course. Fengi gave him a bit of time to think before continuing. "Remember the day at the lake? She gave it everything to try and impress you. I think I chased her for a week following that loop. Not that she would show it, of course. And why do you think she went into the water, huh? You and Sapphire having quality time together, that's why. She couldn't stand it." "But what about up on shore? I mean, if anyone was having quality time there..." "You were warm, and I don't get to beat those two at anything normally. And there was a big difference between playing in the water and curling up around someone." "Well, she did that, though." "While drunk," Fengi dismissed him. "Honestly, have you never done something you didn't dare to normally while drunk?" Tom's mind flashed over the hundreds of bad ideas involving alcohol in his past. "Quite a few." "See? She likes you, but doesn't know how to show it, so help her along a bit, will you?" She sounded almost pleading to Tom by now. "You think he's much better?" Zarko added in, crouching down and inspecting Jarrex's harness for damage. "Nope, that's why I think this might work for once." "For once?" Tom questioned. Fengi gave him a bit of a scowl as she sat thinking for a bit before moving over to whisper into his ear. Do not say this to anyone, because she will likely kill you if you do. Her and Balathon had a bit of a fling. It didn't go very well. He was all feelings and she, well, isn't. So he dumped her. She thought it was all her fault for being stupid. He didn't really help matters, calling her a shallow dimwit for not understanding what was going on. She did not take that very well. Tom could only imagine the results of that insult. And I think she's scared shitless of that happening again. A girl that doesn't really like talking about feelings? Tom thought. Rare for sure. In Tom's mind, that was one hell of a perk, though. He really didn't like that stuff. It was hardly surprising either, considering who he was dealing with here. I won't say a word. Good man, Fengi replied. He almost expected her to pat him on the head. She just retreated back to her sitting spot in the grass, though. Now, what did you do to her? I've never seen that before. Remember Kieran's first flight? No, you didn't, Fengi replied in disbelief. How many? Only 5, a little at a time. Worked even better than I thought it would. I certainly couldn't carry your fat ass that far, not to mention the speech she was making, Zarko added. You gave her honey, didn't you? Nah, these, Tom went, holding up the little box, lightened as it was. Hard candy. Is it like honey, or did you just give your new partner drugs? She replied in confused disbelief, looking up from the harness. Well, sugar was kind of like a drug, Tom guessed. Probably best not to say that, though. It's like hot honey, only better, Fengi went before he could respond. Still a dirty trick, Jax interjected indignantly. Hey, you still won, big guy, Fengi retorted. Jarex responded, letting out a satisfied grunt. Do any of you know how long she will be out? Tom then questioned, looking at the still snoring jackalope. An hour, maybe 2, and she will be sore as hell when she wakes up, Zarko responded, sounding like she knew what she was talking about. Well, she certainly got what she wanted then, Fengi added. Tom just looked at her quickly. Which is? Tom questioned, raising an eyebrow. Damn it, dude, she replied, sounding very disappointed in him. Do you know of another man in the keep who would have gone along with that? Rachuk, maybe Anchor? Anchor is married. And do you seriously think Rachuk, of all people, would tolerate her for an extended period? Prior to you coming here, she was already the reason for most of his headaches. That was perhaps putting it harshly, though she was apparently finding the notion funny, using excessive hand gestures and giggling all the while. He had to give her that. Rachuk did like to go by the books whenever possible, and Jackalope really didn't. He was brave as could be, though, not to mention tough. Not that it mattered if they couldn't stand each other, of course. Fair points. What about Heron? Would you describe him using words such as exciting, adventurous, or rambunctious? Fengi replied sarcastically. No, Tom admitted cautiously. Luckily, you're both crazy, brave, and completely incompetent when it comes to girls. It's a match made in heaven. Hey! Tom did feel like he should be insulted by that. She delivered it like a compliment, though. Ha ha ha! Jarek let out tauntily at Tom's expense. Last time I checked, you and Marina broke up following a dispute over sleeping spots. You are in no position to make fun of anyone, Zarko replied coldly, eyes not leaving her work. Tom had to suppress a chuckle at that, as Jarek looked like he was going to reply, but then swung his head around to hide it from view. Sapphire, Dakota, and Balathon sat at their assigned seats along the periphery of the large council room. Towards the far wall stood a small podium, where someone she assumed to be Lord Haldex was standing. Everyone was seated, though they were still waiting. She guessed, based on the extravagantly decorated platform behind the speaking podium, they were awaiting His Majesty. It didn't take long before the door swung open to the sound of marching footsteps as a full squad of royal lifeguards entered. She had seen them before accompanying the king through the city on special occasions. Their gilded armor shone like a mirror, silver and platinum trimming shimmering like starlight. In the center of the formation, His Majesty walked at a brisk pace, making for the platform, stopping to give a polite nod to the day's speaker, who bowed in return. The guards spread out through the room as the king sat down at his raised seat. He looked troubled, or perhaps just grumpy, she couldn't quite tell. It had been 15 years since last she had seen him, back when the Queen was on the throne. He wasn't wearing his full royal attire, his crown not even present. Instead, he was clad in fine-looking blue and white silks, with only a very delicate rapier at his side. If the rumours about his paranoia were true, then Sapphire was willing to guess those silks hid mithril chainmail or something of the like, though. Thank you, Your Majesty, Lord Haldex stated. Now for today's meeting,
We shall first be discussing the findings at Ullanor Keep. It has been confirmed that the keep has indeed fallen to the enemy, though it stood abandoned when our forces arrived. No sign of either the inhabitants or the original force sent to the keep.
There were gasps around the room, though many also seemed to fall into discussion. Sapphire guessed many had feared this to be the case then.
As with Lorry Keep, there were no bodies left, so we fear the worst has indeed come to pass. Furthermore, evidence of heavy fighting was evident throughout the keep. It would seem then that the inhabitants fought to the bitter end to defend their home, much like those of Lorry Keep.
Shivers ran down Sapphire's spine at the thought. They had known they had a chance at least. She couldn't imagine being among the last standing knowing you were going to die.
Any signs of artifacts like the ones mentioned at Bismarck Keep?
The king questioned intently.
No, your majesty, none. We have representatives from 4 keeps in total here today. 3 have reported skirmishes with corrupted forces, though only Bismarck Keep was themselves engaged, and twice for that matter.
Yes, I've heard the report. What of their neighbours? Yrrol and Riva, isn't it?
No word of anything being wrong, your majesty.
Yes, but do we know they haven't been attacked?
No, we do not, your majesty,
Lord Hardax replied in an apologetic tone. When is their next trader due?
I do not know that either, my king. Carlos, find out when a trader is due a visit. If it is more than a week, dispatch a messenger immediately.
The king was clearly not pleased with the current situation. Sapphire had to agree with him. Something was afoot.
Right away, my king.
An older, slightly fat-looking Dragonette responded from one of the inner chairs before getting up to leave. Your Majesty, if I may, Dakota went, raising her hand.
Who might you be?
The king responded, looking straight at them, head resting on his right hand. Dakota Bismarck, your Majesty, she replied, bowing her head.
You may speak.
Dakota stood from her seat, back straight, looking ahead. Following the battle for my home, we secured a set of telepathic earrings from the enemy. I can send word to my keep to launch an investigative party.
Very well, do so immediately. We must know where we are standing on this matter.
Right away, your Majesty. Sitting back down, she began fiddling with the earring, before settling into the trance-like state it induced. Aren't you the ones accused of traitorous behaviour? Another voice questioned, earning him an angry glance from the speaker. What are they doing in the council chamber then? This is outrageous, came another voice. Sapphire could feel herself shrink in her seat, as more and more eyes turned to them.
Silence!
The king went, in a loud, commanding tone.
I have already received the report on that investigation from Colonel Hashor last night. They are no traitors, otherwise they would not be here today.
The king then got to his feet, looking around the room.
In fact, they may be the only people who have had good news to give on this subject in the last month. According to the good colonel, they in fact performed above and beyond expectations. That is hardly true of many people in this room today.
We just got praised by the king, Balathon went, leaning over, his face ecstatic. Sapphire honestly didn't know what to say right now, as she looked back at him, wide-eyed. Wouldn't that be on account of their pet warrior? Tom, was it? Some important-looking individual question sounding exceedingly annoying. What's a Tom? Sapphire heard some of the other frontier people to her right question. Oh boy, she thought to herself.
Speaker, the report on the battle for Bismarck Keep, if you please, the king ordered,
sitting back down.